Please welcome to the stage Fran Katsoudas, Cisco.
Hello and welcome to a very important conversation around how we bridge the digital divide. I'm Fran Katsoudas, and I'm incredibly fortunate because my role at Cisco is to work with customers, to work with partners, to work with governments in building relationships, all in service of powering an inclusive future for all. This is our purpose as a company. And I want to tell you something really important, which is purpose is also a really powerful way for us to build our business. At Cisco, we believe that we are both doing good for the world while running an effective business, and that we believe you don't have to make a choice about one over the other. And so my hope today is you're going to see both the private sector, you're going to see public sector leadership talking about how we do this. Something that we've realized at Cisco is that really education is the pathway. And we have been very committed to training students around the world. To date, we have trained 23 million students in technology, and we want to train so many more because we understand that when you train a student, when you give skills, when you connect a school, when you enable a university, when you help a community, you are building digital inclusion. And this is something that is incredibly important to us. So we're excited about the conversation today. We hope that you not only find inspiration from the stories that you hear, but that we all leave with actions that we commit to taking together to truly bridge the digital divide and drive this inclusive future for all. So to start the day, please join me in welcoming to the stage Reshma Sajani. And Reshma is the founder and CEO of Moms First and Girls Who Code. Welcome, Reshma. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Reshma Sajani. I'm the founder and CEO of Moms First and the founder of Girls Who Code. And I am so thrilled to be joining this conversation today about the digital divide and the need to address educational inequities. This topic is very close to my heart. I founded Girls Who Code with the hope that we would close the gender gap in technology. And for the nearly 10 years as CEO, I scaled it to one of the largest nonprofits in the world. We taught over 1 million girls to code. And more than anything, the thing that I am the proudest of is we changed culture to make coding cool. And I'm incredibly proud of that. But consider this. We had a higher percentage of women computer scientists in 1995 than we'll have in 2025. Why is that? Because we use these tactics, these strategies, to turn girls and women off of computer science. We have Barbie dolls that say, I hate math, let's go shopping instead. When we turn on the television or we watch a movie and we see what a programmer looks like, it's like a dude sitting in a basement somewhere drinking a Red Bull. And little girls say, not only do I not want to be him, I don't even want to be friends with him. We turn girls off. And what if all these years, all these decades since we had the world's first programmer who was a woman, instead of turning girls off, we had turned them on? It's interesting, the same thing happened with internet access. Today, almost half of the world's population still does not have access to the internet. And in Africa, only 36% of the population has access to broadband. What if, in the early days of Web 2.0, we made sure that everyone, no matter who they were or where they lived, were able to get on the internet? What if when we laid the first lines of broadband access, we put it in the poorest neighborhoods instead of the richest ones? I don't want to miss opportunities like that again. And that's why I'm talking to everyone who will listen to me about aspirational AI. I am an AI optimist. I truly believe that generative AI has the opportunity, the power, to put money in people's pockets, to lift them up and put them into the middle class. But that means that we have to make sure that every child, no matter where they are born or how much money they have access to AI, that they have the ability to tinker, play, and build on ChatGPT. And if we're intentional about the adoption of AI, we may not just prevent inequality gaps from widening, but we actually could use AI to close them. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I built a tool with Moms First called paidleave.ai. As many of you know, many women across the country, across the world, don't have access to paid leave. They go back to work 2 weeks after having a baby. And that means that they have to make impossible choices between caring for their families and feeding their children. And the pandemic, not just in the United States, highlighted the structural inequalities that women face because they don't have paid leave, because they don't have childcare. So after 10 years of being the CEO at Girls Who Code, I founded Moms First to help pass paid leave. And 3 years later, we are leading the fight for America, for 85 million of America's moms. And I thought, because of my background, how can I use technology to help solve this problem? The United States is the only industrialized nation without paid leave, and now 9 states plus DC have access to paid leave benefits, but fewer than 5% of them, of eligible workers, actually claim their benefits. And that's because, well, at least in America, government sucks at customer service. They make it hard. They especially make it hard for poor people to access their benefits. And that's why at Moms First, we built paidleave.ai, and it's one of the first generative AI tools that are helping solve a public sector problem. And we're announcing later today at CGI a commitment to expand it. I believe that generative AI has the power to get benefits in the hands of people. And it's just one example of how technology can be used to create more equitable systems. I want to see AI solve COVID, solve climate, solve cancer. And we are at a pivotal moment to make technology work for everyone. And we can't miss this opportunity. That's the power of technology. And that's the potential for equality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reshma. That was incredibly powerful and a reminder that we all have to push to ensure that AI closes these gaps. Now it is my privilege to welcome to the stage Lisa Felton of Vodafone Foundation.
Thank you very much, and it's a real privilege to be here today. At the Vodafone Foundation, our mission is simple: we connect for good. One of our key pillars of this mission is ensuring that everybody has access to education and is prepared to live in the digital world, leaving no one behind. For the past 11 years, together with UNHCR, we have worked together to deliver quality education to refugees and host communities. Through our Instant Network Schools program, we have leveraged innovative partnerships and digital solutions to reach over 300,000 students in 6 countries. Now we want to expand even further to Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, 70% of the population is under 30. Over 17 million children are out of school, and a quarter of young people are unemployed and face significant barriers to education and opportunities, which is made worse by the ongoing conflict and climate-induced disasters. More than 4 million Ethiopians are currently displaced. For these communities, education is more than just learning. It's a pathway to resilience and to stability and to hope. My own grandparents fled Germany during the 1930s as refugees, and I know how hard it is to restart, and how important it is for education to be open to refugees to be able to integrate within communities. In collaboration with Safaricom Ethiopia, USAID, and AMREF, we are proud to announce a Clinton Global Initiative commitment to action today to contribute to the Kafeta Youth Program, an ambitious initiative led by AMREF, who are here today, and USAID. This £60 million program acts as a one-stop shop for young people, offering essential services such as health and family planning, civic engagement, professional development, and connections to employment. Our role, through a $1.8 million contribution from the Vodafone Foundation and in-kind contributions from our partners, we are digitizing the Kafeta Youth Program. We are setting up digital hubs to expand access to education and life skills, and we are creating pathways to employment, especially in the tech sector. By integrating technology, we are elevating an already impactful program to new heights, unlocking its potential to reach even more people. The impact will be profound. We anticipate a 50% increase in young people visiting the Kafeta Youth Centers. We hope to see 90,000 young people, half of them women, and a growing percentage of youth with disabilities engaging with these services at least once a month. This is just the beginning. If you are interested in joining us on this journey to create life-changing opportunities for Ethiopian youth, we would love to hear from you. Together, we are connecting for good and creating a better future. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ina Fried, Chief Technology Correspondent at Axios. Yesterday, I was at this State Department event where Secretary of State Blinken was talking about the importance of making sure that as this next wave of technology gets brought out, that we don't leave a huge swath of the world behind. And then he invited up people from OpenAI and Google and Meta and Amazon and IBM to talk about their commitments. And while everything that was said, I think everyone in this room would agree with, I was also struck by the fact that, yet again, it was the heads of all these US companies talking about what the rest of the world needs. So I'm excited to have a discussion on building for other parts of the world with people from those parts of the world, because I think that too often gets left out of the discussion. So please help me welcome James Mwangi of Equity Group Holdings, Fran Katsoudas of Cisco, and Mike Mpanya of Newbie AI. Welcome. So yeah, I think everyone on this stage, everyone in this room shares the goal of having technology be distributed more globally, more equitably, but it's not just as simple as getting the technology out there. And I want to really use our time to have that discussion, because I think it's so important. Goodwill matters. Financial commitments obviously matter, but so too does having the right people in the room. You can spend a lot of money and have a lot of good intention, and if you don't understand the places you're in, if you don't understand the actual needs of the community, if you come in like you're the expert and parachute in, it just doesn't work, and we've seen that. Fran, obviously, Cisco's been doing this for a while. We think of you all as helping connect the world. Your technology is very important. I'm curious, what lessons have you learned along the way in terms of, what is needed beyond money and good intentions?
It's such a great question, and I think a great setup, Ina, because I don't think we can assume that there is one play to connect the world. I think we have to be incredibly thoughtful. I think we have to think about culture. As I reflect on your question, a learning that I had was Last year, I spent about 8 weeks on the African continent, and I was based largely out of Johannesburg and Cape Town. What was so fascinating was my first week, I met with customers. And we had great discussions, and they were addressing some of the issues. My second week, I had meetings with some of the same customers, and they shared more. And then the next time I met with them, they shared the issues. They shared things that Cisco could do better. And so one of the learnings that I've had is you have to invest the time, you have to listen. Right now, unfortunately, the economic model has made it incredibly hard for the world to be connected. There are about 2.6 billion people that are not connected today. And one of the challenges is in a country like the US, 98% of people are on 5G. When you look at other countries around the world and those countries that we would consider more poor, if you will, that's only 1%. So you see this difference. I think the other really challenging difference is that there are countries where people are having to spend 10% of their annual income to get connected, which is so much more that we would spend in Europe or the US. And so you have these headwinds, and I think what you have to be able to do is understand the challenges, spend the time, invest in the conversations. For us, because we have been running digital projects around the world, we start first with heads of state on what problem are we trying to solve. And I think when you start there, you end up in a good place.
And James, I'm not going to pretend like I'm the expert here by any way, shape, or form. You've spent your whole career taking on some of these big challenges. What are some of the things that you've learned about what works and what doesn't work? You have this opportunity for this audience that wants to do good, but I think we can all say we don't always know what we're doing. What are some things people should keep in mind that you've learned?
Thank you very much. One is to appreciate that spirit of wanting to do something. But that spirit should be humbled by contextualization. I think we are talking about technology, and Frank has said, it is important to contextualize the environment, the situation, the people, the culture, and everything. Technology is not an end in itself, it's a means. And it's just a piece of the puzzle. So if you forget 80, 90% because of the 10% you have control of, you distort the entire environment. The second aspect is appreciating that the world is not at the same level of development or evolution. It is important you look at the use cases that are relevant in the environment that you are installing technology. So when you look at, I come from sub-Saharan Africa, our use cases are very, very different. And if you look at the evolution, that region is becoming a global leader in mobile technology. Why? Because our use cases are tied to the technology available, and most of the innovations are there. So that is a very important aspect. And the last one is contextualizing what else. Technology, as we said, is a tool. Do the people have the capacity and the competence to use the tool? So a lot of investment should go to people. Technology should be people-centered, and focus first on the people and then give them the tools. But if the people don't have the capacity, the competence, then you have a challenge to be able to use that technology. Let's, for instance, look at AI. In Africa, we have challenges of data points. We haven't collected sufficient data. So the application of AI should start with developing the capacity to collect data and then apply the technology on the data available. But if you really come and train people on analysis without training them on data collection, data quality, then data security, then there will be a problem because we're not on the same level in terms of touch point. That's how I could conceive the situation we have.
Well, that's great. There's 2 points that we're definitely going to get more into. One is what's needed for the different parts of the world to benefit from AI. And then the other point you raised is people have to know what to do with the technology. The parallel that comes to mind is US education. You know, we spend all this money in the US to give every kid a computer, but we don't spend any money hardly in those contracts to fix the computer, to teach the teachers who are gonna have to use the computers. And I always think, you know, why is that? And I think similar.
I think it's the question of involvement. Can we co-create? Because we have the problem, you have the tools to solving our problem. But how do we ensure that the solution is not a square peg
in a round
and
hole.
In a loud hole? So that aspect of co-creating, see people sitting together, deep analysis, but not assume because it works in the US, it will work in sub-Saharan Africa, or it will work in another market. Customize it to the environment.
And let's dive into that, Mike. I mean, what are some of the cultural sometimes it's a cultural barrier, sometimes it's a capacity barrier, sometimes it's just understanding the places. What are some of the other things that tech companies and other people really should keep in mind as they're doing it? I mean, sometimes it's a barrier to a specific piece of technology. Sometimes it's an obstacle like, you know, power is required for this solution and there isn't consistent power. What are some of the things you find that people often don't have at the top of their mind that they should?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a bend, and it's a bend that most people in tech have and most engineers have. When I was an engineering student, my joy would come from something working. So you build it and it works, and you're happy that the technology works. But the power of technology is the ability for the human to leverage it. So you can have the finest machine or the finest large language model, but how does this actually advance my life? I'll give you a practical example. When you talk about the internet in the United States, most people experience the internet in the Internet of Things, e-commerce, the sharing economy, etc. What's advanced the internet in Africa has been messaging systems, has been mobile money in Mr. Mwangi's home country, has been the ability for people to connect and trade using the technology. So something that was raised was the use case. But another thing to be raised is the culture. The biggest multiplier of any piece of technology is its ability to leverage existing culture. So one of the things we're really passionate about at Nubi, and our focus is really AI use cases in health, finance, and learning. And the reason we say learning as opposed to education is because education is the more formal, learning is the more lifelong one, is we don't come in and say, how do we shift what people are doing and make them do things our way? We look at what's already existing and say, how do we accelerate that? How do we use technology to leverage that? I'll give you the example in finance, and one of the struggles is data points. So we work with a lot of banks. Now, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, they're massive informal lending systems. In South Africa, we call them stokvels. In Kenya, you have chamas. In DRC, you have likelembas, but all of them function on a similar metrics. So the de-risking metrics when lending is not the credit history of the person, but it's the fact that you know their mom, their sister, their brother, you go to the same church. So in other words, you're so connected with this person that there's no incentive for them to not pay you back. So now when we build credit models, we are beginning to see what does it look like to leverage social connections? Is it possible for us to actually link bank finance to a so-called social capital? So in other words, if my community wants to lend me $1, can a bank match that dollar? That's just one example. Another example we had with great success was implementing the world's first malaria insurance product. And the biggest challenge there we found was actually appreciating the fact that people who are working have to struggle with traffic and they're oftentimes moms, fathers, they have to pick up their kids. And the innovation was simply putting a testing kit in a person's office and medication delivered to the office. So basically realizing someone's a patient for part of a day, but a person for the whole day. So when it comes to innovating, you innovate for people, not for customers or patients.
And you hit on something, yeah, totally. You hit on something that I think is hard to sometimes know, which is how much of the effort should be pre-designed versus just providing the access and training and not assuming how it's going to be used. The example I was giving backstage, I remember what the Grameen Foundation was doing in Southeast Asia. They found if you just give a woman a cell phone and connectivity, she'll make the micro businesses. She'll make that whole village. If that's the one cell phone in the village, she will make amazing use of it. She needs to know how it works. She needs access to it. How do we strike that balance between not just dumping technology, but also not assuming, oh, we know what you should do with this? And it gets at your point, that it's not the same thing maybe that I do with my cell phone. I'm struck by another example of, in the early days of cell phones, you had subsistence farmers who used to have to decide ahead of time which city they were going to walk to. There might be two equidistant markets, and before cell phones, they made their choice, and they had to take whatever amount of money was given. And with the cell phone, suddenly they could see different prices at the market, and it dramatically changed their lives.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we oftentimes believe that professionalism or even formal education gives us a monopoly on knowledge and creativity. There's a saying in my language which I'll try to translate, and basically says knowledge puffs up. So in other words, you must be careful of hubris when you begin to learn. And the hubris that people in technology often have is that they believe they know what the technology is best for. And one of the projects that was led by one of our co-founders, who's a doctor, was implementing the first piece of AI technology in a government hospital in South Africa, Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. It's called One Beat, and it's used in the pediatric ward. And it was designed, yes, by technical people, but with the doctors. So the doctors actually sitting in and saying, this is what we need. This is what we think would be helpful. Can it do that? Can it do that? And what we use in terms of the language at Newbies, we call it empathy by design. And we're saying we design not with an end user, but with a central user. And even when we speak to our clients, we say, look, we're not the type of company where you're going to give us a whole pot of money, tell us to go away, and we come back with a piece of technology. We want you to be part of the journey as we walk with it and as we develop it. And as soon as you begin to understand that there is indigenous knowledge of worth within communities, you begin to integrate communities into the design process. And then community becomes an asset, and not just a customer you extract from, but an asset you learn from. One of the interesting intersections I find with large language models is that particularly for Bantu people, we believe that knowledge was kept in language. So one of the reasons why we were so passionate about the oral tradition is we believed as people told stories, you can keep information and transfer them from generation to generation. So the opportunity for us around AI and large language models in particular is finally African interactions, and that indigenous knowledge can be put into a base that allows us to solve problems. But it begins with us seeing the community as an asset.
And I do want to get in, the rub there is that while it's clearly, I think there's agreement that it's a danger to be prescriptive with how the technology should be used. What I also heard from each of you is you do need to do more than drop off the technology. There isn't a level of understanding and knowledge transfer just around the how to use the technology that needs to be a part. I'm curious for both James and Fran, what are some of your experiences? How is that best delivered? How has it shifted? Maybe we'll start with you, Fran, and then James, but have you shifted how you spend those dollars on those projects? Is there more going to training than there used to be? Are you doing training differently?
So I think that as it relates to training, absolutely. And I think we're on the cusp of an approach now from a training perspective that takes into consideration how the learner wants to learn, which I think is very powerful. I think you have to be open to iterate. So something that we've done is we have not just brought the technology, but we have set up these incubation centers, these edge centers across the continent. And what they allow us to do is not only showcase the technology, it allows us to create some really interesting ecosystems. And so we train future Cisco partners on the technology. We ask them to use the office as their office to host customers. And then we learn from how they are engaging customers. And then what that has evolved to now is We have, as an example, a cybersecurity and AI center in Nairobi on the campus of the University of Nairobi. And it's training people on cybersecurity. It's taking local use cases. We're learning. My sense is the next Edge Center will build off of that success. And so you're right. I think it's more than dropping off the technology. It's more than training. I think it's the investment and the time, because we learn. And that makes us better around the world as well.
And James, you talked in your introductory statement about the need for, the capacity and the skills to use it. What specifically, because I want to push the audience a little more about what that means and doesn't mean. When you say that, what is it you think people want and need versus what is it that typically gets delivered? And delivered is probably part of the problem, even that verb.
Thank you very much. Because of the audience, I manage Equity Group, which is a financial group in banking, in insurance, but mass market, 22 million customers. When we're making decisions about technology, in mind is our customer, the products that they want to consume, and where they are today. The best technology is that one appreciates where the customer is today and where the customer should be tomorrow, and it becomes a journey. It's not, it becomes a journey with the customer. That journey includes affordability. What devices will the change in the system at Equity Group cause the customer to incur? Is that within the capability of the customer in terms of affordability? Let's look at the skills and competencies required. The security, we would say it's the internet. Is the customer able to secure themselves? Would they be socially engineered through cybercrime? So those are the considerations that we always put in place. The relevance of the system, the cost structure, the skills and the competencies required in use, and lastly, the outcomes. What is the expectation of the customer in terms of an outcome? And broadly, what we have realized, it's not the sophistication, complexity, or cost of the system. It's the security of their money, not even of the system. It's the security of their system. Its ease, its convenience, and more importantly, accessibility and reliability of the system. So those are then what we prioritize and say, let's design a system that provides these metrics, because that metrics is what is relevant to the consumer. And that is when you meet the needs of the user as opposed to meet the needs of the engineering team that is developing the system.
So we only have a few seconds left, but I want to do a lightning round question, which is, if there's one thing that you think is needed for your countries, for different parts of the world to really benefit from AI, what's missing that you want to remind this group? I'll give you a free one, which is the one you mentioned earlier, local data. You know, ChatGPT is not going to solve problems in places it doesn't have any data on. What other things are needed, real quick? Anyone who wants.
I'll just say local partners, because where there are data gaps, there could be knowledge that local partners can actually leverage to close that gap.
I think we have to put the technology in the hands of the future innovators, because they will understand what can be done in ways that we can't.
In continent development that involves particularly the young people in the continent, so that they are not passive, but they become partners with the technology companies.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for presenting a lot of insight in a short period of time. Fran, Mike, James, thank you all.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite our next CGI commitment makers to join me on stage. Is that right? Okay, excellent. While they're coming up, I'd like to invite Joe Wolf of Imagine Worldwide, Lisa Waters of Benetech, and George Soror of Building Tomorrow. The United Nations first declared education as a universal human right in 1948. 76 years later, the UN reports that 250 million young people across the planet are out of school, and only a third of 10-year-olds can read and understand a simple text. Such an expansive global problem is going to take creative solutions to close what is more than just an education gap, but a canyon for many children around the world, limiting their ability to fully pursue their future aspirations and economic livelihoods. But as we've heard and will continue to hear during the rest of our time together, there are leaders who are implementing solutions to ensure education is not only a declared universal human right, but an achievable one. So please join me in thanking them for their commitment. I believe there's going to be a photo taken. I could be wrong. Oh, there is. Indeed. There's a camera. Thank you so much. And I'd like to welcome back up Fran, please.
All righty, so our next panel is going to focus on the powerful intersection of education, the public sector, and how we really push on the digital divide. I'm very happy to share that I have two folks that are joining me on stage for this. So first, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency, Minister Mudavida. Please join me on stage. And I want to try to say your name more appropriately. Mudavadi. Yes. Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce to the stage Lady Miriam. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please. So I want to thank both of you for joining, and I want to talk a little bit about the connection between technology and career paths and opportunities. And so what I'd love to ask each of you is, could you tell us, when did you know that technology was going to change your own trajectory, both as an individual and as a leader? And Mr. Minister, maybe we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam. First of all, I'm stepping in for President Ruto.
Yes.
So perhaps you'd have wanted to hear more of his story than mine. But nevertheless, I would say that technology has always been fascinating from a very early stage. And what we have seen, particularly in Kenya, for instance, is how we were able to transact, move away from a cash economy to a digital economy, and how today the smallest business operator at the farthest end of Kenya can actually transact and do business without having to rush to a bank. The bank is literally in his or her hand. That is fascinating.
It's game-changing, and I think when many of us visit, we see not only this breakthrough, but the businesses that have developed as a result of that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It has developed, it has even made it more secure. I can tell you from a different perspective, bank robberies were very frequent. But I can tell you with technology, one of the best things that has happened to an economy like ours is that business transactions are now safe.
Yes.
That is so important for everyday businesses, even for the small and medium-sized enterprises. So technology can really transform lives.
It's fascinating, and it's a powerful theme around how transparency and keeping businesses safe can digitize countries and drive a level of inclusion as well. So thank you for that. Lady Miriam, I know that technology has been a big part of your story. We'd love to hear more.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you, first of all, for having me here. Before I start, I just would like to thank the people of Kenya. Maybe many people in this audience may not know, but I would like to thank the people of Kenya for giving refuge for the last 30 years of the refugee girls I work with. I'm not a refugee, but I have a similar life with refugee girls living in Kenya. So on behalf of all our girls in Dadaab and Kakuma, I want to say thank you to the Kenyan people. Thank you. And so my story has led me to work in refugee camps. You know, I Am the Code is the first organization in Africa to go to refugee camps across the world. I just came from the Philippines and Pakistan, but my main focus in Kenya is in Kakuma and Dadaab. And we have over 45,000 girls there. And so I didn't go to school. I learned how to code in the UK. That's where I'm based now. So I'm a full stack developer. I spend most of my time in local libraries in Guildford, where I live, and to learn how to code. So coding really changed my life. Coding has totally transformed my life in the world. And so I build the solutions around the world to go and help young women and girls. So that's why I really want to make sure people understand what's happening in Kenya today, what's happening in refugee camps. They are the first girls who are learning how to code. That's just because of my story, being born in Senegal, and ended up in helping young girls in Africa.
I had a really powerful experience in Kenya where I attended a school that was helping refugee girls learn cybersecurity skills, and I was able to hand out certificates to the young women and to see what they have overcome and what this education means from a validation. It must be incredibly powerful work for you.
It is. It is really powerful. I think we just need to think about Kakuma and Dadaab. Like I said, the people of Kenya has given refuge for the last 30 years. But it's the first, we opened the first ever academy for UNHCR Kenya. And the Kenyan government is working extremely hard right now with UNHCR Kenya and I Am the Code with the Shirika plan. And so there's a hope for those young girls, because I know behind the scenes, some of my colleagues are here in the room, especially the Special Envoy in Technologies in the room, where they're working really hard to make sure that not only young girls, technology is reaching young women and girls across Africa, but it's also reaching these refugees. And one of the key pillars of the Shirika plan is the human economic development, where I Am the Code is playing a massive role. You just have to imagine for the next 6 years or 10 years how these young women will have mobility. We can invest in these girls. They can go and they can work for Cisco. They can go across Africa to use the technologies. And being a refugee is no written on their back. That's what the girls told me. And I had the privilege for the last 9 years to work in Kakuma and Dadaab now. And I know there's a hope. And when you see the academy being open in Kakuma, girls coding, developing AI solutions, understanding language models, it gives us a hope that not only you are in a refugee camp, but you can contribute to the African economy in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's why it's really important we emphasize that young women and girls, no matter where they are,
that's right,
they can become like me.
Absolutely, and you changed their identity, which is incredibly powerful. So let's pull back a little bit and just talk about everything happening in Kenya today, which is fascinating from a technology perspective, from a sustainability perspective. And Mr. Minister, I'd be curious, what are the global trends that make you optimistic for Kenya's future and bridging the digital divide?
Fine. Maybe let me just, before I pick on that, let me just weigh in a little bit on the Shirika plan, because it's a very serious initiative. And actually, through this program that she's part of, Kenya has actually been able to elevate itself to it's a program that is now recognized by the UNHCR as one of the best programs when it comes to giving support and introducing young people to technology and the economy. So I think it's a very good thing that is happening for Kenya. Now, in terms of what technology, and if you look at the future trends, what we can do in terms of agriculture, food security, being able to actually get more jobs for the burgeoning population. Remember, we have a very youthful demographic, and technology is the best way to go. In Kenya, for instance, in the last 2 seasons, we have been able to increase our food production because using technology, we have been able to reach out to the farmers in terms of what fertilizer is required, the quantity, and so forth. So you're not spending money on the wrong kind of quantity. So we have seen a lot of improvement, and we're going to see it as we roll out the universal health care. So these are very critical areas. And in the rural areas, we are also reaching out by creating hubs, and ultimately we want to be able to provide about 100,000 kilometers fiber optic, so that we can reach out to more people. So this we see is setting us in good place for competition, for competitiveness globally.
And do you feel like the youth of Kenya see the opportunities that are shifting now because of some of these breakthroughs in technology?
Yes, they are. The youth are very enthusiastic, I can tell you that. And it's a window that we must capitalize on. We must invest much more to really allow them to explore this space. And I think in terms of whether you're digitalizing government services or business opportunities, the reach out in education, the idea of getting innovation and creativity, we must invest in the infrastructure that will allow the youth to use this window.
That's great, thank you. Lady Miriam, the minister started to go here as well. You have a very impressive goal of getting to 1 million girl coders by 2030. We would all, I think, love to hear more about how your work is truly driving digital access and economic opportunities for refugees in Africa and other parts of the world as well.
That's a very good question. You know, when you talk about 1 million women and girls coders, people think it's very, very easy to do, but actually it's not easy. People are telling me, why don't you do 10 million? But we're talking about the most marginalized girls on earth, and they live very difficult conditions. And if you just think about Kakuma alone and Dadaab, you know, these young women came from very traumatized backgrounds, like I did as a child. And so you need to think about their well-being first, and then make sure that they are comfortable in learning before we impose any solutions to them. And I think what makes the I Am the Code program special for the last 8 years, you know, first of all, we got recognized by the World Economic Forum as an Education 4.0 lighthouse, both at the United Nations, you know, all the way to, you know, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, and we've been working very hard in Kenya to make sure not only people understand STEM subjects, but they also understand STEAM subjects, you know, art and designs. And I think Cisco has done a wonderful job in making sure you're educating people around STEM subjects. But at the same time, I think what is really important for us, this is an African-led organization, you know, and it's really, it's one of my passion. And by 2030, I know those young women and the host community, not just the refugees, because we also talk about the host community in Kenya, the urban Kenya, but urban Africa is gaining skills. One of the things I do, I sit at the council at the World Economic Forum, where we are so passionate in reskilling young boys and girls. And if you see all the uprising we have across the world, the anger, the frustration, the demonstration we have, is because young girls and boys don't have the skills they need. You know, they need skills. The skills is what will give them money, and we all know that. Not everybody will end up in Harvard. Not everybody will end up in Cambridge. Not everybody will end up in Ivy League schools. And so we need to find alternative education, just like I did. I was a cleaner when I came to the United Kingdom. I was cleaning Mrs. Matthews' house. And I will take 2 hours a day to go to a local library to learn how to code. I couldn't speak English. I didn't have the luxury many young people growing up across the world had. And within 2 years, I learned 7 coding languages. Today, I'm a tech pioneer sitting next to you. So what I'm saying is that if we invest in the host community in Kenya, but also the refugees who are, you know, becoming a burden, because economic burden, you know, but we need to make sure they have the skills they need. And I think that I Am the Code program is one of the most comprehensive end-to-end solution program, work with all the technology companies around the world to do this. And then just to finish, we managed during COVID-19, I worked so hard, really extremely hard, because I knew we're going to sit in this room today to talk about content. We all want to get young people to learn skills, but no one has created the content for them to have access to the content. And through our strategic partnership with World Economic Forum at Davos in 2020, I managed to mobilize all the CEOs to tell them, you are making so much money in Africa selling your software. I know this. Can you just give free content to the girls? And that led to I Am the Code building one of the biggest and the first platform in the world where we have 60,000 courses. The young women and girls all across the world can learn how to code for free. It's a 12 weeks blended curriculum, and you can go and learn how to code from urban Kenya to urban Dakar. But also you can, and then when you finish your 12 weeks or your 24 weeks, you can go and say to Cisco, hey, I know how to code. I know how to develop things. I've got my certification. I have my labs. Can you hire me? And without this, simple approach that we really doing at I Am the Code, the girls will be left behind. In 2030, we're going to come back here and celebrate hunger. The girls in Africa will not be part of the global conversation. So I think that's why I am so excited about the Shirika plan, because I know it's a very good plan. And there's a big pillar on human development and socio-economic development as well, where I know that the girls in Kakuma will end up here at the United Nations in 2030, becoming full-stack developers, developing AI models, and improving the GDP of Kenya. Right? Because this is a population who are not economically being active. They don't just need to have to be working agriculture and working other things. They can develop solutions. If I'm sitting here today as a full-stack developer, because the United Kingdom gave me a chance and a passport. And that's why I think that I Am the Code will be one of the biggest stories in 2030 here.
It's wonderful. Congratulations. And maybe we can use this now to transition to maybe a final question for both of you. Mr. Minister, it's funny, today we have heard on stage a lot of positivity about AI and education in general. And typically when we talk about AI, there's a worry about how will the young girls that you're focused on be impacted. Would love your perspective from a government perspective around education and AI, and then we'll come to you, Lady Miriam.
Well, I think the most important thing is how do we deal with the integrity of AI and the ethics that go around it. I'm sitting here representing a president who perhaps was the first to engage hundreds of thousands of young people on the X. Because not too long ago, Kenya had an episode where through AI, young people were also being mobilized on the social media, and initially for a good purpose, and then it drifted into a dangerous area. So clearly there are some challenges that we must work on together. We should not stifle AI and the use of it, but we must also have a parallel process that looks at the integrity and the positive use of AI. So the issues that will go into cybersecurity, the issue that will make sure that it is being used for ethical purposes is going to be very, very important as we go into the future. And this also calls for serious collaboration between the governments and the private sector in this, because all of us must invest. We must invest through the educational systems and so forth, but develop a positive outlook when it comes to AI.
That's such an important point that you mentioned, and so just two, I think, big takeaways for us. So the first is, from a cybersecurity perspective, what we now know is that the GDP of the African continent was hit by about 10% several years ago as a result of cyber attacks. And then the second important point, I think, is around ensuring that we have these responsible frameworks. I will just say from a Cisco perspective, this is something that we're really proud to partner around the world and to share what we're finding, because I think this makes us all safer and better, so thank you for that. And Lady Miriam, when you think about AI, is it friend or foe? How do you think about that?
I mean, from my perspective, I see AI, the intersection between AI and humanity and business. That's how I see it. And really to include young women and girls. Just during COVID-19, I brought one of the, biggest baroness from the UK to come with me to Kenya. And one of the things you probably might not know is that, sex education is taboo in Africa. But we managed within 2 days, at the Day of the Girl, to develop a chatbot. The young women in Kakuma developed the chatbot because they wanted to know what period or menstruations are. And really getting the young women to use this chatbot, it's now the I Am Record Health chatbot, where they can, in a very confidential way, ask information about their health and their bodies, was really important to us. And I think I see AI as a tool for Africa. AI can really help the African continent. We can personalize learning. We can make sure that the government's civil servants learn about AI. The platform we are offering to people is now in the Philippines, in Pakistan, in 84 countries. Because I think the government, the public servant, also need to know what AI is before we sign contracts and things like that, right? And so I feel that we all need to be educated around AI, be humble about it, but at the same time, make sure the young women and girls in Africa, including boys now, need to be part of the AI conversation from the design of it to the delivery, but make sure that we really think about at all levels, from the private sector to the government, the intersection between AI, humanity, and young women and girls who are right now need our help. They need jobs, they need skills. Without skills, they can't have money. Without money, they end up on the street. And I think we need to bring our humanity back into the conversation to make sure that my girls are not left behind.
Thank you. So I want to say a huge thank you to Minister Mudavadi, because I think you had all of 3 minutes notice to join us on the panel. Thank you for representing President Ruto and all of the work that's happening in Kenya. Lady Miriam, thank you for the tremendous work that you're doing to reach 1 million girls and to give girls, I think, a new identity and a new future. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you. Appreciate it. Don't leave just yet. Okay, so we have a few more exciting things to do here. So next, we're going to hear from a member of our 2024 CGI Greenhouse cohort. CGI Greenhouse supports entrepreneurs from growth stage social impact companies from across the globe, working to accelerate and scale their innovative technologies and business models that aim to solve critical challenges. Enterprise recognized by CGI Greenhouse are examples of what's working around the world to build a more equitable and resilient future for all. Please join me in welcoming Richard Zelson, MyStream. Hey, Richard, thank you.
Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
So, hi, everyone. Thank you, Fran. So I'm Richard Zelson. I'm the founder and CEO of MyStream. At MyStream, we've developed a breakthrough new technology that can help bring connectivity to those that need it most. As Reshma and Fran have pointed out, and also according to the International Telecom Union, over 60% of Africa still doesn't have access to internet. Without solving that problem, it'll be almost impossible to fully address the global problems surrounding education, jobs, healthcare, poverty, and so much more. The idea for MyStream came to me years ago when I saw myself and everyone around me becoming isolated by their mobile devices. I thought there had to be a better way for technology to connect us directly in ways that provided joy, connection, and collaboration instead of isolation, and actually uplifted and improved lives. So fast forward to today, and we've successfully invented and protected with 6 US patents, a new solution that actually improves how devices are able to communicate directly. And it can work even when devices have no other cellular or other internet existing service. In fact, the network technology that we created solves many of the core and persistent problems facing Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, and even internet communications today. Today, over 1/3 of the global population is still offline, and without a solution, billions of people will remain without access to 21st century jobs, and trapped in poverty. Also with climate change, as increasing storms knock out power and cell towers, it's making it more and more impossible for people to communicate during emergencies. These critical problems won't be solved by current alternatives, where the more mobile devices that are around, the more hotspots and cell towers you need. With MyStream, as more mobile devices that are around, the better the wireless. So this is not only relevant for next generation Wi-Fi in stadiums, but also to help save lives in emergencies and uplift communities in developing areas, especially ones that would be overlooked because they'd otherwise be too expensive to provide the infrastructure needed to provide that community with broadband. It's also critical, as we connect this next billion people, that we do it in a way that's as friendly, environmentally friendly, and energy efficient and resilient as possible. And that means not requiring more infrastructure as more mobile devices join, especially when a better way exists. And so that's what we've developed. Our network technology can also unlock additional greater capabilities on existing devices. So it can also be applicable to accessibility. So for example, we figured out how to provide lossless communications over Bluetooth. So not only can MyStream be used to connect devices more seamlessly and enjoy lower latency communications at greater distances, but because we've been able to create a lossless connection, it's also able to help power a new generation of hearing aids and other accessibility services. So for those of you in the audience that are interested in helping support our global mission and want to help improve data equity, internet access, accessibility services, or emergency communications, please come talk to us. Myself and my vice chairman are here, and we'd love to talk to you. Our goal is to work with the right partners to make sure that we scale our solution so that it helps the countless people, companies, and communities who could benefit. Thank you for your time.
All righty, so we're going to go ahead and move into our final panel. And we're so fortunate. We actually have 3 global visionaries who are going to really help us understand the intersection between education and the economy. And so please join me in welcoming Oksana Mateyash, Teach for Ukraine. Thanks, Oksana. Thank you. Former President Ivan Duque Marquez of Colombia. Thank you, Mr. President. And Sherry Weston, CEO of Sesame Workshop. Thank you. All righty, so let's go ahead and jump in. And I'll just start by saying, as a daughter of an immigrant, when I was very young and getting ready to go to school, my parents told me that they sat me in front of Sesame Street to learn English. And that's probably one of the first interesting experiences that I had with education that came through a very different format. And so what I'd love to do, and President Duque, I'll come to you first, I'd like to do a quick lightning round and ask each of you to share a pivotal moment when education intersected your life.
Okay, so I think there was a moment in life where I realized that education is connected to values and principles. And I still remember that amazing time when I was maybe in my primary studies. And I had a professor that I still remember her name, Gladys de Rosso. And we were in a discussion, and she said something that I still have in my heart. She said, Ivan, education is about keeping principles that will last forever. Because we tend sometimes to believe that education is just the immediate knowledge or that skill that you learn. But I think the foundational spirit of education are those spirits that are nurtured and will remain with you forever. So I think that was a lesson that I took from an early stage in my life.
How old were you?
Maybe around 7 or 8.
Wow, and that impact, and you remember your teacher's name?
Yes.
As well. Sherry.
Well, I actually am thinking of impacts that were more as an adult, and I often think about, having the opportunity to see young children react to Sesame Street. I love that you learned English, and so many people have. But if even in refugee camps in Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar, to see children see Sesame content for the first time ever and to see their delight. But if I'm trying to think of something even more personal, I have to say, I have a daughter I adopted from China, and I will never forget when I put Big Bird Goes to China on the screen, her crawling up and putting her hands up, just mesmerized. I mean, it just had such an impact on me, and sort of the power of media for help children see in themselves, to help them really learn and to engage them. And little did I know at that time that I'd be working at Sesame 2 years later.
No, how funny. Oksana.
I really didn't have to think a lot about that, because for me, it's a very specific moment in my life. I was in the 6th grade and I was really struggling to learn English. And my parents couldn't afford a tutor for me, but I had an excellent teacher of English who really believed in my potential. She kept saying that, I shouldn't give up, I should be investing, and that education is going to be the tool that will help me fulfill my dreams. And since that time, since that teacher was believing in me, the education has been transforming my life in each and every step. So it's a huge privilege to be leading the organization that is keeping education going for so many children in such a critical time. And I do believe, and I'm convinced, and I wouldn't have been sitting here today with such a distinguished speakers along you all if not education.
Thank you, Oksana. So Sherry, I'm going to come to you. Sesame Street is in its 54th season, and it's impressive to see Sesame Workshop still fulfilling its mission. And I love this, to help children grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. Can you share the secret of your agility in the face of change, disruption, and even adversity?
Yes, thank you. So it's true, Sesame Workshop was created 55 years ago, and our mission is to help children grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. It sounds like a clever tagline, but it's helping children have those academic basics in smarter, stronger health, resilience, and kinder empathy and understanding. And the other thing I would say about our ability to be sort of still relevant and so effective around the world really goes to the prescience of our founders. Because when Joan Gance Cooney created Sesame Street 55 years ago, it was really a radical experiment to see if the medium of the day, television, could be used to teach. There was so much data in the US that children, particularly children in poverty, children of color, were arriving at school without the skills they needed to learn. And so she thought, can I use television to teach, but most importantly, to give those who don't have the same access to early education a chance to really thrive. And so fast forward today, we are seeing more children in need of quality education. 117 million people displaced, almost half of whom are children. And when you see the number of times that education is disrupted, whether that's a pandemic or crisis or climate, so we today have the opportunity to have this proven means of using media to teach, and not just television anymore. It's digital, it's WhatsApp, it's YouTube, it's still television, but it's high-tech, low-tech, depending on the context. And I think, if I may, the best example I could give you is the work we're doing in the Middle East, where we partnered with the International Rescue Committee through a generous grant from the MacArthur Foundation. We've created the largest early childhood intervention in the history of humanitarian response by combining local Arabic Sesame content that is so engaging and integrating that into our partners on the ground. So it's not only on YouTube and satellite reaching millions, but it's also in home visits and learning centers. And in terms of innovation, I think that's how we're continually able to reach. When COVID hit, and they could no longer be in schools or learning centers or home visits, we put that content on WhatsApp, gave it to groups of parents in Lebanon, and had those home visitors and teachers call twice a week to help facilitate that engagement between adult and child with the content. And NYU did a randomized control trial showing that the learning outcomes in 11 weeks was equivalent to a full year of pre-K. So that is what we're using in Colombia, to reach children who are actually on the move. And we've been able to adapt this program and content to reach children in Ukraine. So, it's really such a great tool, and I think the need has never been greater.
Yeah, and maybe staying on the topic of innovation, Mr. President, in your book, Orange Economy, Infinite Opportunity, you shared that the creative opportunity is a valuable, I think, philosophy, and especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. So can you talk a little bit about the orange economy and how countries are driving this?
So when the Orange Economy was published, that was in 2013. So it has been quite some time. And it was aimed to present the power of the creative and the cultural economy. And we were describing the way that it has in our own economies in Latam, but also in the bigger economies. And there was something that struck many people when I showed the numbers, and I said, the creative economy is much bigger than the coffee economy in Colombia or the mining economy. And we don't devote too much attention to that. And I said we have to nurture through education those capabilities that are the essence of human capital. Because if you're able to train, if you're able to educate a child and tell them that they will be employed where their talent is, that will exponentially trigger human capital. And something that we tried to focus on was not relying so much on STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, but STEAM education. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we started focusing on that during 4 years, but we also created in the national working training institutes that through those talents, we could make Colombia grow in the overall creative economy. And there was something amazing, just with one example, the movie industry. When we started the administration, we had almost $10 to $15 million per year invested. We created the incentives which trigger the human capital training, and we put Colombia in the eyes of many of the movie industry investors. And in 4 years, we passed to $300 million per year. Actually, this year, there's a production company called Dynamo that is producing 100 Years of Solitude that is going to become Netflix's largest investment ever in a Latin American country. And most of the crews are with Colombian talent. So that's an example.
That's an amazing example, and I think shows the power of connecting education and this creative economy and the economic benefit, which is amazing. Oksana, I'm going to come to you, and I've had a chance to talk to you before. Something that is beautiful to see is despite the challenges in Ukraine, education is prioritized, and I think it's a big part of supporting inclusive access. I've spent a lot of time in Poland, and I have met Ukrainian mothers, and their children are dialing into schools in Ukraine, and it's a way of keeping that community. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing in the intersection with technology?
This is a very true story, Fran, about many people who had to flee the country because of the Russian invasion, and now they're trying to keep the connection going by using the technology. So in 2022, when the large-scale invasion started, we actually had Teach for Ukraine had to sort of adhere to technology as our lifeline. We had to figure out how to actually ensure that children can continue sort of receiving education despite the war. So in March 2022, we launched a huge tech-based tutoring program to support children's education, which has since then supported 20,000 children with remote learning. And we had remarkable results because through our tech-based intervention, these children received 14 extra months of learning in math and 11 additional months of learning in the Ukrainian language. And these results were validated through the randomized controlled trial that Teach for Ukraine implemented together with the World Bank. And this is the first randomized controlled trial during the war in the country. But while the technology really provided us with the opportunity to keep education going for Ukrainian children, it has also sort of underlined the huge gaps in access to technology, especially for children from rural areas and those severely impacted by the war. So I always say when it comes to innovative solutions, there is so much more that needs to be done to really make sure that this technology can be leveraged for the benefit of every child. And in Ukraine, we have extra challenges, and these challenges, they include power outages, displacement, damaged infrastructure. So, you know, kids have to sort of stay connected no matter what. And many of them, they have to rely on smartphones with poor connectivity at best. So you can only imagine how massive are learning losses in Ukraine right now. First, because of the COVID, and then 2.5 years of the Russian large-scale invasion. So in some cases, these learning losses are 5 years. So imagine if your child has been out of school for almost 5 years, and this is the reality for many children in Ukraine. So we were very proud yesterday, actually. I'm very proud to sit here as the first commitment maker at CGI. We launched yesterday a Clinton Global Initiative commitment to action to start the Learning Recovery Program for Ukraine to support 40,000 of children with access to in-person and tech-based tutoring, mental health support, and also access to technology. And I do hope that next year I will be able to tell more about the progress on that.
We know that you will. Yeah, we know that you will. It's been impressive. President, did you want to jump in?
Well, I have to say something, and it's inspiring to see the resilience and the strength of the Ukrainian people. You mentioned about the orange economy, and I'm a co-founder of a documentary production company that is called Maloka Films. And our first documentary is called Athletes of War, about all the Ukrainian athletes who are in the front lines defending their country and their territory. And we literally had to produce with a lot of struggle from a distance. But we got, for example, one of the Philharmonic orchestras doing the music, and we saw all the commitment of the Ukrainian people. And all I have to say is we cannot let the Ukrainian people down. We have to keep on supporting them, and the victory of Ukraine is the victory of democracy and liberty, and that's why we need to stand there.
Well, if I could just add one thing I would like to say, as challenging as it is for those in Ukraine, we work very closely with the Ministry of Education and Science, and they are so ahead of the curve in focusing and investing in early childhood in spite of all that they're going through. So it's another thing just to applaud you for.
I think something that's been so powerful across all of the panels today is just the understanding that we can leverage technology, we can leverage education, these connections, not when times are good, but when it's needed the most, when times are hard. And I love the fact that I think so many times we point at all of the things that are going wrong. I think on this panel you see so much of what is going right and so much more that we have to do. This panel went by way too fast. Please join me in thanking our panelists today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.